Here are some guidelines for putting together a great project final presentation. What you need to do first is have the handout in front of you entitled Presentation Guidelines, which you can find on the course website under Important Documents or on the Parish portal page for the course. Take a look at that handout, read through it carefully, taking note of both what you need to cover in your presentation, which you'll find on the front page, as well as how you'll be graded on matters such as content coverage, good communication skills, and use of images and other presentation aesthetics, which you'll find on the back page. Secondly, you need to choose your presentation tool. For those of you presenting in person at one of our final face-to-face meetings, you can use any presentation tool you like, be it Microsoft Outlook, PowerPoint, Google Slides, or even Prezi. For those of you who will not be presenting in person, let me recommend Keynote for Mac. Keynote provides voiceover capability, and many of you already use a Mac, so likely you've already got the app on your computer. Just look for it in your Launchpad. On the other hand, if you use a PC, you can also do voiceover presentation using PowerPoint or Google Slides, provided that you also use the free online service called Screencast-O-Matic, which you can find at the website I've got posted here. Start familiarizing yourself with either of these options now to give yourself enough time to complete your work. Next, once you've read through the presentation handout, start piecing together your presentation based on the research you've done. Note, this is very important. If you're creating a voiceover video, be sure to script your monologue and then upload your finished project to YouTube. If you need help with uploading to YouTube, it's not difficult. Just send me an email and I'll walk you through the process. Be sure to give yourself plenty of time and make your presentation as professional as possible. Now let's quickly walk through some examples of past student presentations to give you an idea as to how this can be done well. This first example was put together by a student based on her research in advanced prosthetics. Following the guidelines of the handout, she previewed her presentation and then included a few comments regarding what got her interested in the technology in the first place. Based on her studies, she then went into the details of the technology, namely what it is and how it works, which is very important. She gave us a brief history of prosthetics, what many are made of today, as well as how they're often used. She then discussed her specific case study in which these modern prosthetics have been used. Here, she chose Oscar Pistorius and his use of the cheetah leg technology in the Olympic Games. Take a look at the detailed topics she addressed. Finally, she provided her conclusion, or perhaps we should say her thesis. She specifically addressed how the use of this technology affected human relationships. Remember, our ultimate goal in the project is to make a value judgment about the use of technology based on the relationships affected, and that's just what she did here. One thing to note, one area in which she could have improved this was that she needed to address how relationships were affected in her specific case study, that is the case of Oscar Pistorius. Let's look at another one. This student chose edible vaccines for her project, particularly a banana engineered to vaccinate against hepatitis B. She went into detail about what are edible vaccines. She discussed how they're made, how they work, as well as what advantage there are to using these types of vaccinations versus typical fluid injections. As any good researcher would do, she also highlighted some of their disadvantages. Next, she went into the specific real-life case study she was interested in, one involving the use of an edible vaccine. Here, a clinical trial put forth by a professional researcher named Dr. Charles Arnson of Cornell University. This is precisely what she needed to do. Finally, she then made her value judgment, again based on her approach, and she concluded that the technology is a good one based on the clinical trials of her case. Excellent. One last example. This student did his project research on the use of anabolic steroids, particularly in the world of sports. He discussed what drew his interest in the topic, following the guidelines handout. Do note that he ought to have previewed his topics for discussion here, nevertheless, he at least got our attention. In preceding, he gave a brief history of steroids in general based on his research, and then discussed how they actually work, including how they are taken, very important. He showed a short video illustrating his own points, which, by the way, if you decide to show a video in your project, you need to make sure that it's no more than 2 minutes long. He then went into the effects or side effects of the use of steroids on both men and women that most people don't know about, and then discussed his case study of interest, Alex Rodriguez. Now look at what he did next. He discussed the effects of Rodriguez's use of steroids, specifically what they had on the relationships in his life. His life with the Major League Baseball Association and the law, his fellow athletes, and the general public. Considering that, he then made his value judgment. Was taking steroids to enhance his natural abilities worth it for Rodriguez? No. And he then provided the reasons why. That is what you should be doing with your project and final presentation. Why? As a reminder, many people who create, support, and apply modern techniques do not consider the effects they have on the relationship's dynamic, and from a religious standpoint, they should. One final comment. In none of these examples presented here was there a direct association of the use of technology with God or the supernatural. That's perfectly okay. Each of these students simply focused on what he or she naturally observed were the overall effects on the human relationships involved. That is, on what it means to be human naturally, and what, if any, effects there were on the greater community in the natural world. If your research doesn't take you into the divine side of things, so to speak, don't force it. Remember that religion has a lot to say about the other two relationship dynamics, humanity and nature, and you can focus simply on those. As always, be sure to contact me should you need further clarification.